The whispering woods were a place where light and shadow intertwined like dances at twilight, their eternal waltz casting flickering patterns on the mossy forest floor. In these woods, the air always seemed heavy with secrets, as though the trees themselves bore witness to ancient mysteries too sacred to share. It was here, amidst the towering oaks and winding streams, that Queen Seraphina now stood, her once radiant aura dimmed by despair. Her realm had been a masterpiece of symphonies, each living creature a note in a grand melody that bound the world together. But all of it, the singing brooks, the rustling leaves, the joyous hum of life, had fallen silent. The absence of sound was not natural. It was an emptiness that echoed louder than any cry. It was as if the very soul of the land had been stolen. Seraphina clutched her crystalline scepter, its faint glow struggling to pierce the encroaching darkness. Her song, the heart of her kingdom, the melody that could call forth blossoms in the dead of winter and heal the deepest wounds, was gone. Lost, stolen. She turned to the trees, their ancient forms gnarled with wisdom, and whispered, "Where is it? Where is the song that binds this realm?" Her voice, though soft, carried the weight of her sorrow, reverberating through the stillness. The woods stirred, not with wind, for there was none, but with an almost imperceptible shifting. The trees did not answer directly, for they rarely spoke in words. Instead, they offered whispers, fragments of meaning that swirled in the air like half-forgotten dreams. Bound, taken, veil. The disjointed whispers seemed to coil around her, tugging at her mind like a faint melody she could not quite grasp. Seraphina closed her eyes, straining to hear beyond the silence. Her heart ached with the memory of the melody she once commanded, a song so beautiful it could coax stars from their celestial paths to dance in her skies. It had been hers alone to wield, a gift from the celestial beings who watched over her realm. But now, she was powerless. The whispers grew fainter, retreating into the depths of the woods. Desperation clawed at her chest. "Please," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "If you know where it is, show me the way." A single beam of moonlight pierced the canopy above, illuminating a narrow path winding deeper into the forest. Seraphina hesitated. The path seemed to exude an otherworldly energy, its edges flickering as though it were a mirage. Yet she knew she had no choice. The life of her realm depended on her finding the song. As she stepped onto the path, the air grew colder. Shadows thickened, curling around her like tendrils, and the silence deepened into something almost oppressive. Each step seemed to draw her further from the vibrant world she once ruled, plunging her into a realm of muted colors and dulled senses. At the path's end, she reached a clearing. In its center stood a great stone altar, worn smooth by time and etched with runes that pulsed faintly in the darkness. Seraphina approached, her breath hitching as the whispers returned, now clearer but no less cryptic. Bound by shadow, the song sleeps. She placed a hand on the altar, and a surge of energy coursed through her. Images flashed before her eyes. A shattered harp, its strings scattered across lands unknown. A figure cloaked in shadow, its hands grasping at something precious. A veil shimmering like a mirage, holding something hidden yet achingly familiar. The veil of silence, she murmured, the name forming unbidden on her lips. It was an ancient curse she had heard of only in myths. A spell that could bind not just sound, but the essence of creation itself. Her heart sank, but determination burned brighter within her. If her song had been stolen and bound by such a curse, she would face whatever lay ahead to retrieve it. Her realm depended on it, and she could not allow it to wither into silence. As she turned back toward the forest, the path ahead was no longer clear. The woods had shifted, their labyrinthine trails twisting in ways she could not fathom. Yet the faint glow of her scepter illuminated her way, and the whispers, now softer, seemed to guide her. With every step, Seraphina felt the weight of the silence pressing down on her, but she vowed to endure. She was the fairy queen, the bearer of the celestial song, and she would not falter. The whispering woods held their secrets tightly, but Seraphina was determined to uncover them. Somewhere beyond the veil of silence, her melody waited, a song that could restore her realm, if only she could find it. The veil of silence was more than legend. It was a prison, a shadowy barrier woven from threads of despair, designed to trap the intangible. As Seraphina ventured deeper into the forest, she began to feel its presence. The air grew heavier, pressing against her as though the unseen forces of the world were conspiring to slow her progress. Even the whispers of the trees had faded now, leaving only a suffocating quiet that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. Her scepter's light flickered, dim and uncertain, as though it too feared the path ahead. Still, Seraphina pressed on, guided not by sight, but by a feeling. A faint pull at the edges of her mind, like the distant memory of a dream. She emerged into a clearing unlike any she had seen before. The ground was bare, a stark contrast to the lush greenery she had left behind, and the air shimmered with an unnatural stillness. At the clearing's center stood an archway of twisting obsidian, its surface etched with runes that pulsed faintly in the darkness. The veil. Seraphina approached cautiously, her steps measured. As she neared, the archway began to hum, a low, resonant note that thrummed in her chest. The sound was not a melody, but the absence of one, a hollow, aching tone that seemed to mock her loss. The queen raised her scepter, its light now a feeble glow, and touched it to the runes. A shock of cold shot through her hand and the hum deepened into a chorus of whispers. They were not the soft murmurs of the woods, but harsh, guttural voices that clawed at her mind. "Who dares disturb the veil of silence?" the voices demanded, blending into a cacophony of accusation and scorn. "I am Seraphina, Queen of the Fairies," she declared, her voice steady, despite the tremor in her heart. "I seek what has been stolen, my song, the soul of my realm." The whispers laughed, a sound devoid of mirth. "The song is bound, lost to the shadows. You will not find it here." Seraphina clenched her fists. "If it is bound, then I will unbind it. If it is lost, I will find it. I will not leave without what is mine." The archway shuddered, and a swirl of mist began to form within its bounds. Through the haze a figure appeared, tall and cloaked in shadows, its features obscured, but its presence palpable. The Enchanter of Shadows. "You presume much, Queen of Fairies," the figure said, its voice a deep rumble that echoes through the clearing. "Your song lies beyond this veil, but it is no longer yours to claim. It belongs to the silence now." Seraphina's grip on her scepter tightened. "You bound it," she accused, her voice filled with defiance. "You tore it from me and my realm. Why?" The enchanter's form seemed to shift, the shadows around it writhing like living things. "Because the song is too powerful to belong to one being. It shapes, it commands, it bends the will of the world. Such power is dangerous, even in hands as delicate as yours." "It is not for you to decide," Seraphina shot back. "The song is my gift, my duty. Without it, my realm withers, my people fade. You have no right to steal it." The enchanter fell silent, its shadowy form still. Finally it spoke, its tone laced with something that could have been regret. "If you wish to reclaim it, you must walk the path of silence. Only there can you find the fragments of what you have lost." "What path?" Seraphina demanded. The enchanter raised a hand, and the mist within the archway thickened, swirling into a vision. She saw glimpses of mortal places, an abandoned meadow bathed in golden light, a cathedral shrouded in shadow, a crumbling bridge beneath a blood-red sky, and a lighthouse standing steadfast against a raging storm. "Your song was shattered," the enchanter said, its strings scattered across the mortal realm, each fragment bound to a place steeped in the essence of life. To reclaim it, you must gather them all. Seraphina's breath caught in her throat. The mortal realm, a place her kind rarely ventured, for its energies were chaotic and unpredictable. But if that was where her song had been taken, she would go. "And when I have them?" she asked, her voice firm. The enchanter's shadow seemed to smile, though no face was visible. "Then, perhaps, you will understand the cost of what you seek." Before she could respond, the mist surged forward, enveloping her in cold, blinding light. The last thing she heard was the enchanter's voice, soft and mocking. Good luck, Queen of Fairies. May the silence guide you. When the light faded, Seraphina found herself standing at the edge of a meadow, the first of the places she had seen in the vision. The air here was different, alive, yet burdened by an ineffable sorrow. The path of silence had begun. The meadow was bathed in a golden light that felt unnatural, as though the sun itself mourned for what had been lost. Wildflowers swayed in a wind that did not touch Seraphina's skin, their vibrant colors a sharp contrast to the heavy stillness in the air. Yet, even here, the silence persisted, a silence that spoke of something missing, something stolen. Seraphina stepped forward, her feet brushing against the grass, and felt a strange pull toward the center of the meadow. It was as though the earth itself whispered to her, guiding her steps without words. At the heart of the field, she found the first fragment of her song. A single silver string, glinting faintly in the sunlight, coiled delicately around a lone flower. She knelt and reached for it, but as her fingers brushed the string, a surge of emotion flooded her senses. Laughter, pure and unrestrained, rang in her ears, a sound so vibrant it made her heart ache. It was the echo of joy, a memory preserved within the fragment. For a fleeting moment, Seraphina could see the scene it had captured. A child running through the meadow, their laughter mingling with the songs of the wind and the rustling of the grass. The vision faded as quickly as it had come, leaving Seraphina clutching the string, her breath unsteady. The joy it held was profound, but it was incomplete. A single note in a symphony that yearned to be whole. She tucked the fragment into her satchel and turned her gaze toward the horizon, where the vision of the next fragment had shown her a towering cathedral. The path that stretched before her seemed to shimmer, as though it existed on the edge of reality. Without hesitation, she began the journey. The cathedral rose before her like a sentinel, its spires piercing the storm-laden sky. Its stained glass windows, though cracked and faded, still glimmered faintly, casting fractured rainbows onto the cobblestone steps. As Seraphina entered, a wave of sorrow enveloped her, heavy and inescapable. The pews were empty, and the air smelled of dust and forgotten prayers. At the center of the nave, an altar stood draped in tattered cloth, and on it lay the second fragment, a golden string, gleaming faintly in the dim light. Seraphina approached with caution, the silence pressing harder against her with each step. As she reached for the string, the air around her seemed to ripple, and a vision surged into her mind. She saw a figure kneeling at the altar, their shoulders trembling with grief. The sound of quiet weeping filled the space, resonating with a pain so deep it seemed to echo through the very stones. The fragment held the essence of sorrow, a note so profound it left Seraphina trembling. Tears welled in her eyes, unbidden, as she felt the weight of the emotion it carried. it was not just sadness but a yearning for something lost, a love, a hope, a dream. Clutching the golden string, she whispered a quiet prayer for the figure in the vision, though she knew they were long gone. The fragment hummed faintly in response, as if acknowledging her compassion. She placed it beside the first fragment in her satchel, the two strings emitting a soft, resonant hum as they lay together. The crumbled bridge came next. It spanned a gorge where a river once flowed, but now lay dry, its bed cracked and barren. The bridge's stones were weathered and broken, their edges jagged like unhealed wounds. At the center of the span lay the third fragment, a string of crimson, vibrant and defiant against the desolation around it. As Seraphina picked it up, another vision seized her. She saw two figures standing on the bridge, their hands clasped as the sky darkened with impending storm clouds. Their love was palpable, a force that seemed to defy the very world. Yet as the storm broke, so did their bond. One figure turned away, their silhouette fading into the rain, leaving the other alone beneath the torrent. The fragment pulsed with the essence of longing, a note that spoke of love found and lost, of bonds broken but never forgotten. Seraphina felt its ache in her chest, a hollow pain that lingered even as the vision faded. The final destination was the lighthouse, a solitary tower standing steadfast against a raging sea. The wind howled as waves crashed against the cliffs, and yet the light above shone unwaveringly, piercing through the storm's fury. The last fragment, a sapphire string, was wrapped around the lantern at the tower's peak. As Seraphina reached for it, the vision came swiftly. A lone figure tended the light, their eyes fixed on the horizon as they waited for a ship that never came. Their hope was unyielding, a beacon that refused to falter despite the odds. This fragment carried the essence of hope, a note that rose above the storm, defying despair. It resonated with Seraphina's own determination, bolstering her spirit as she added it to her collection. With all four fragments now gathered, Seraphina felt the beginnings of her song stir faintly within her. Yet, it was still incomplete, the melody fractured and fragile. She knew her journey was far from over. The path of silence had led her to these pieces of her soul. But the final trial, the confrontation with the enchanter, still awaited. And with it, the truth of what her song truly meant. The path back to the fairy queen's realm was shrouded in mist, each step taking Seraphina deeper into a silence so profound it felt alive. The fragments of her song pulsed faintly in her satchel, their resonance growing stronger with each step. Yet, they did not sing. They waited. As the mist thickened, she found herself standing before a place she had never seen but instinctively knew. A vast cavern, its entrance shaped like a yawning maw, where whispers seemed to spill out like breath. This was no ordinary place. It exuded a sense of timelessness, a void untouched by the laws of her realm or the mortal one. Inside, the air shimmered with echoes, fleeting remnants of songs and voices that had long since faded from memory. They brushed against Seraphina like ghostly hands, weaving through her hair, her wings, her thoughts. She stepped carefully, her senses heightened, and came to a chamber at the cavern's heart. Here stood the Keeper of Echoes. The Keeper was a being of light and shadow, its form constantly shifting, as though it could not decide what it wished to be. Its face was obscured, but its voice was clear, a blend of tones, both male and female, young and old. "You have gathered the fragments," the Keeper said, its words flowing like a song. "But to reclaim your melody, you must face the truth it hides." Seraphina tightened her grip on her scepter. "I have faced sorrow, longing, and hope. I have seen the echoes of joy and the pain of loss. What truth could be greater than these?" The Keeper tilted its head, an oddly human gesture that felt out of place. "The song you seek is not merely yours, Seraphina. It was never wholly yours to begin with." The words struck her like a blow. "What do you mean?" The Keeper extended a hand, or something like a hand, and the fragments in her satchel began to rise, floating in the air between them. They spun slowly, their faint light growing stronger as they aligned themselves, forming a pattern that resembled the strings of a harp. When the celestial beings gifted you the song, they wove it not just from the music of your realm, but from the essence of others, the Keeper explained. The song binds, yes, but it also takes. Every note carries a fragment of another's story, their joy, their sorrow, their longing, and their hope. Seraphina stared at the fragments, their light now glowing brighter than ever. "I never knew," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I thought it was a gift, meant to heal and nurture." "It is both gift and burden," the Keeper replied. The Enchanter of Shadows sought to sever the song's influence, believing it too dangerous to remain whole. In his jealousy and despair, he sought to control what he could not possess. The shadows around the Keeper swirled, forming an image, a memory perhaps. It showed the Enchanter as he once was, a figure of light who carried a melody of his own. But that melody had faded, leaving him a hollow echo of himself. "His song was lost to time," the Keeper continued. "When he saw yours, so vibrant and unbroken, he could not bear the weight of his silence." Seraphina felt a pang of sorrow for the Enchanter, though his actions had wrought destruction upon her realm. "If the fragments are tied to others, how can I restore the song without harming them?" The Keeper's form shifted, its light growing softer. "You cannot simply reclaim it. You must give something of yourself in return. Your own essence, your own story, your own song." The realization settled over her like a shroud. To restore the melody, she would have to sacrifice a part of herself. The fragments pulsed in the air, waiting for her decision. "What will remain of me if I do this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The keeper's voice was gentle. "What remains will be true. The song is not just power. It is life, woven from the threads of all who hear it. To restore it is to become part of something greater." Seraphina closed her eyes, her heart heavy yet resolute. The echoes around her seemed to hold their breath, as though the entire cavern waited for her answer. Finally, she reached out, her hands trembling, and touched the floating fragments. They pulsed with warmth, their light enveloping her. A wave of emotions flooded her: joy, sorrow, longing, and hope, intertwining with her own memories and dreams. The keeper watched silently as the fragments fused, their glow becoming a single, radiant light. Seraphina's breath caught as the melody began to play, soft at first, then swelling into a symphony that filled the cavern and beyond. She felt a part of herself slip away, but what remained was stronger, clearer. The song was no longer hers alone. It belonged to all who had touched it, all who had given it meaning. As the last note faded, the keeper spoke. "You have restored the song, Seraphina, but its final test lies ahead. The enchanter awaits." With the melody resonating in her heart, Seraphina turned to face her greatest trial, knowing that the song would guide her through the shadows. The path to the court of shadows was neither clear nor straight. It wove through a landscape suspended between worlds, where light and dark clashed in endless battle. Seraphina moved cautiously, the restored melody humming softly within her, its power both a comfort and a weight. The fragments she had gathered had fused into a single essence, yet the song still felt incomplete. She knew why. The final note, the one that would awaken its full strength, awaited her in the presence of the Enchanter of Shadows. The court appeared suddenly, its dark spires rising like jagged teeth from the earth. The air was thick with an unnatural stillness, broken only by faint whispers that carried no words, only intent. Seraphina stepped forward, her scepter glowing faintly, though its light seemed swallowed by the oppressive gloom. At the center of the court, the enchanter awaited. His figure, cloaked in shadows, was more solid now, more defined than when she had last seen him. His presence was palpable, a void that seemed to draw in all light, all sound. Yet his posture was not one of triumph, but of weariness, as though the centuries of silence had worn him thin. "So, you have come," the enchanter said, his voice a deep, resonant echo that seemed to reverberate within her. "And you carry the song once more. I can feel its fragments within you." Seraphina stepped closer, her gaze steady despite the unease clawing at her heart. "I have restored it," she said, her voice firm. "But it is not yet whole. You hold the final note, Enchanter. Return it." and let this realm be healed." The enchanter tilted his head, the shadows around him shifting like a living thing. "The final note is not mine to give," he said. "It was never truly part of the song. It is born from the heart of its bearer, from the sacrifice they are willing to make." Seraphina's breath caught. She had already given so much, pieces of her own essence to bind the fragments together. Was there more to give? Could she bear it? "You misunderstand," the enchanter said, as though reading her thoughts. "The sacrifice is not merely a piece of yourself. It is the willingness to confront the silence within, to embrace it, to let it shape you. Only then can the song become whole." The queen hesitated, her resolve wavering. The silence within her was a void she had avoided for so long, a place of fear and doubt. To confront it now, in the presence of the enchanter, seemed an impossible task. But the melody stirred within her, a soft, insistent note that seemed to echo her own heartbeat. It was a reminder of her purpose, of the life and light that her song could bring. Closing her eyes, she took a deep breath and stepped forward. "I am ready," she said, her voice steady. The enchanter raised a shadowed hand, and the court seemed to dissolve around them. They were no longer in a physical space, but a realm of pure essence, where the boundaries between light and dark blurred. The melody within Seraphina grew louder, more insistent, but it was incomplete. A symphony awaiting its final defining note. The enchanter gestured, and the silence surged forward, enveloping her. It was not the absence of sound, but the presence of emptiness, a void that seemed to strip away her very being. Memories, fears, hopes, they all unraveled, leaving her bare and exposed. And then, amidst the silence, she found it, a faint, trembling note. It was hers, born not of power or magic, but of understanding. It carried the essence of all she had learned on her journey. The joy of connection, the sorrow of loss, the longing for unity, and the hope that bound them all together. The note rose, weaving itself into the melody, and the song surged to life. It was no longer just a song, it was a force, a presence that filled the realm with light and sound. The court of shadows trembled, its foundations cracking as the melody shattered the silence. The enchanter staggered, his shadowed form dissolving into light. For a brief moment, Seraphina saw his true face, a being of sorrow and beauty, his eyes filled with gratitude and regret. And then he was gone, his essence absorbed into the song. The court dissolved, and Seraphina found herself standing in her realm once more. The colours had returned brighter than ever, and the air was alive with sound. The hum of the rivers, the rustle of the leaves, the songs of her people. Her melody, now whole, resonated through the land, binding it together in harmony. It was no longer hers alone, but a gift to all who heard it. a reminder of the unity and strength that came from understanding and sacrifice. As she stood amidst the reborn realm, Seraphina felt a quiet peace settle over her. The silence she had feared was no longer an enemy. It was a part of her, a reminder that even in the void, there was the potential for creation, for renewal. The Fairy Queen's song would never be lost again, for it was now a part of all who had touched it. A legacy of light born from the deepest shadows.